The late summer sees the start of the Class 1 European Championship. Last year, Poole, off the south coast of England, hosted the second round. This year, they host the first round of the series. A four-round championship then for 1994, Marco Capaferri back on the attack, having lost his championship title in 1993 to the Norwegian Andreas Ove Ugland. Ugland now has moved on to endurance racing, running in the Harmsworth Trophy Championship for the Martini Cup. Capaferri sees this as an opportunity to return. At this stage, it's unknown whether he'll run with his son Massimo or his longtime teammate Pierluigi Rivolta. Massimo Capaferri has become increasingly competitive in his own right in Class 1. Marco running with the skater hull, last year with petrol engines, but he has entertained the concept of diesel engines for 1994. Arguing greater reliability than the petrol engines, but of course, petrol often gives a higher racing performance. The Class 1 Championship for the European title taking on a very different complexion to the World's. Capaferri's 1993 rig was highly competitive, but not enough to see him beat off Ove Ugland, who won with a diesel-powered boat, a Buzzi-designed hull with the famous C-Tech engines in the back. As some drivers are returning to monohull racing and the endurance series, so many Italians are reverting to the European Championship as a less expensive form of competition. Capaferri, therefore, has a stronger challenge for the title in '94 than he did when he won it in '92. Shockwave has had new engines put in the back for 1994, moving to diesel power and the C-Techs, and running in the Endurance Harmsworth Trophy Series. Ugland was the last man to run a monohull in the World Class 1 Offshore Series, now exclusively catamaran, and designed much more to close inshore circuit racing than the true traditional offshore style. Poole, therefore, in 1994, sees a new range of competitors coming to contest the European title. In many respects, this championship is changing complexion. Rules have been adjusted to prevent Class 1 world drivers entering the same boats against European Championship drivers. There are also rumours that this series may well become a diesel-powered only series. The first round of the championship then in Poole, out in Poole Bay running for the Needles Trophy. The second round will be on the infamous Cowes Torquay Cowes Run, a long, much more endurance-based event set to test the ability and navigational skill of the drivers. And finally to Italy for 2 rounds in Rimini. The beginning of this year saw Andreas Ove Ugland purchasing a large monohull some 46 feet long and powered by C-Tech diesels to contest the Harmsworth Trophy in the Martini Cup. It means he is missing from the European Championship this year, and it is said that he may contest the 6-litre Worlds down in the Arab Gulf in October. Still running with the same team, Ugland has become highly competitive right across all classes in offshore racing. A shipping magnate in his own right, the sea is very definitely his environment. His throttleman is Jan Hilstadt once more, and Marco Zanoni has joined them in the big monohull for navigational purposes. Safety, so much a part of offshore racing now. The aerodynamically shaped canopies, based on aircraft design, are not just fixed to the surface and the deck of the boat, but are a complete cocoon in which the driver and his throttleman are protected in the case of an accident. And accidents do happen. One of these propellers on the back of a large offshore boat riding up over the deck, which has happened already in the World Series this year when Steve Curtis had an accident in Saint-Tropez with one of the Arab Emirates boats, almost causing a disastrous result. The effects can be quite remarkable, cutting open the carbon fibre decks of the boat. 1993 and the Needles Trophy here in Poole saw Capaferri roaring off into the lead. Ugland, with a large fuel load of diesel, was further behind. But a navigational error would see Capaferri steering on a wrong section of the course. Ugland, seeing this ahead of him, took advantage and moved into the lead. It was a lead he would not lose, stamping his authority on the championship even in this second round of the series. He'd won in front of his home crowd in Arendal, and out ahead of him at this stage of the race, Shockwave was performing extremely well in the choppy waters of the English Channel. Ugland has made the transition from monohull to catamaran racing extremely successfully. The high performance and ability required to control one of these boats at maximum speed goes without question. Ugland then, with a win in pool, would be extremely powerful back in 1993, and Kappa Ferry, with his navigational error, could do nothing but keep up pace and hope to come in second place. But the story was really established back in Arendal at the beginning of the season. Ugland had championed for a long time to have a Class 1 race in front of his home crowd. His shipyard is just up the coast from this small town. A spectacular and picturesque setting as Ugland and his American counterpart, Shell Rocker, in Brooks' shoes, set off down the narrow waterways between the islands. It was a dramatic sight, and for the first lap of the course, Ugland was given a tremendous show of speed by the Brooks boat. Petrol power against diesel, and petrol was winning out at this opening stage. Mercury power had returned once more to offshore waters in Europe. The Butzi-designed hull and, of course, the Butzi-designed Sea-Tech diesels were giving Ugland an increasing amount of performance as his fuel load lightened and the boat became more competitive. But this was in the calmer inshore waters protected by the outer islands. Brooks still at tremendous speed, but all the time the Norwegian creeping closer and closer as the boats headed into the unprotected section of the course. More into the open sea, and Brooks started to lift the bows. Ugland saw the opportunity and moved alongside him. Shell Rocker had come across from the United States ready to challenge both the European and world titles in '93. He'd done so well over in America that he expected little competition in Europe. How wrong he was. Away from the islands and into the full run of the open sea. The chilly northern European waters providing tremendous competitive environment for offshore Class 1. This was true monohull racing in many respects. The local competitors, in fact, in the end coming in second place. But not before the American-based Shell Rocker and Andreas Ugland had had a great battle on the open sea section of the race. There were times when both of them seemed tempted to push their hulls beyond reasonable limits for racing. The boats bouncing on the heavy waves would throw their hulls high in the air and crash down again, creating tremendous stress both on the hulls and the propellers. Ultimately, it would be Brooks who would lose a propeller, forcing them out of the race. The monohull pushed very close behind Ugland, but never overtook. 3 laps of this course should have been run. In the event, only 2 were, as the waters became too rough on the outer seaward side of the course, a situation that favored the monohull briefly, but was not competitive for the catamarans. Ugland would catch up when it came to the calmer inshore waters once more. Brooks started to drop back with a loss of power. The damage to the propellers was becoming an increasing problem, and great vibrations started to move through the hulls. But for the local crowd, they would have one time when Brooks and BP Valentino would pass through the narrow passages in front of the town. A thrilling sight, never seen before here in Arendal, and tremendously spectacular as the helicopters hover overhead and the boats roar through the narrow sound. Brooks first, and Ugland, the local man, in second place. The skater hull has become highly competitive in offshore racing, moving into many classes, but it was proved here in Class 1. Butzi has become a major name in offshore racing, Andreas Ugland also. We shall be back next week with the opening round of the Class 1 European Championship for 1994. Shell Rocker will not be present. His disappointment has followed him into 94, as it did in 93.
What happened, part of one of the blades from the starboard engine come off, starboard drive. I don't know what happened. There's a brand new set of blades too. So.
When that happens, what feeling do you get in the boat? A vibration that you know there's something?
Yeah, we knew either it was a drive or it was a propeller because we had full oil pressure, so we knew something had happened. So we tilted up the drives and I jumped in and looked and I saw it. So that's the end of that one.
Mercury props or roller props?
I won't tell you that.